UFC 274, Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Welcome to your full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Of course, he goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, and as usual, fight-by-fight breakdown, fight-by-fight analysis from that betting perspective specifically. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which underdog perhaps has the best shot at winning, which fights you want to avoid, and some parlay action if you stick around towards the end of the video as well. Of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video, and make sure you participate in the comments. I won't spend too much time because we have a very busy card for this pay-per-view event taking place in Phoenix, Arizona. We got 15 fights on this UFC 274 card, 10 of them on the prelims, 5 of them on the main card. So let's get right to work with the first fight of the prelims. And for that first fight, we have Journey Newson versus Fernie Garcia. Journey Newson hasn't competed since September 2020. He lost to Randy Costa at that time. He fights from the outside, moves quite a bit, but don't really like his footwork at all. I feel like he's off balance pretty often. I feel like he overswings. That said, he can crack, right? He can be explosive. So you do have to be careful when you are going against him on the feet. Going up against Fernie Garcia, UFC debut, coming from Dana White Contender Series. He last competed in October, so still relatively active. Good, quick hands. He has good combinations. He has pretty solid counters as well. Sneaky pop too. Only one TKO to the 10 wins that he has to his name. But again, that one KO that he got was in Dana White Contender Series, so that could be something that he's developing a little bit more sort of going forward. And he should be the fighter that's coming forward, again, to counteract Journey Newson, who typically fights from the outside. To me, coin flip type of fight, but I like Fernie Garcia on this one. I think his striking is a little bit cleaner. I've also seen him use some wrestling before his time in the UFC. Not to say he's a super strong wrestler, but I think he has some wrestling background. I could be wrong there. And again, Journey Newson just doesn't have good takedown defense from what I've seen. So Fernie Garcia, like I said, seeing that wrestling before his time in the UFC, I can see him resorting to that. Maybe not to dominate a round, but definitely to swing around in his favor. In addition to, like I said, the striking being a little bit cleaner. So opening this card up, I'm going to go with Fernie Garcia.
Okay, so this is a good matchup here. We got Fernie Garcia making his debut in the UFC against Journey Newson, who has fought in the UFC. He's looking to counterpunch. In this fight, Journey, I think, has the better counterpunching. I think Journey could have the power advantage in this fight, and I think he has a submission advantage. Now, when you look at Fernie Garcia, he's a wrestler first. He his best trait is wrestling, but definitely he's learning the boxing, and his boxing has been looking good here. And as you looked at his strikes per minute, he gets like 4 or 5 strikes per minute, so he's pretty active as well. But I think that's going to be important in this fight because he's going to be holding the center of the cage. He's going to be marching Newson down. Newson's going to be looking to get counters, or if Fernie goes in for a takedown, he's going to be looking for some type of submission. But yeah, I like Fernie in this spot here because I think he's going to be dictating the fight here. And if it stays standing, I think Fernie's activity and I think his boxing, he could have the better boxing here. And the activity for me is what takes it over the top. So I'm going to go Fernie Garcia having more advantages in this fight. He's coming in here against a guy that I think he should win.
All right, let's move on to the second fight. We have Ariane Carnelossi versus Lupita Godinez. For Carnelossi, she's on a 2-fight winning streak. She beat Estela Nunes in October. Shorter, stockier fighter. She loves coming forward with her attack, loves to be that pressure fighter. She likes to march forward. Pretty decent hand-heavy stand-up, likes to clinch as well. Solid combinations, has some pop with her strikes, likes to engage, and sort of no matter what, expect her to be coming forward. She can land a takedown as well. We see the numbers there, almost 2.5 per fight. Good top pressure, good ground and pound, so pretty well-rounded in that regard. Taking on Lupita Godinez, who beat Loma Lookboonmee back in November. Pretty good overall fighter, solid boxing skills, good movement, good in and out, good accuracy on her punches. She throws pretty decent combinations as well. And we know her wrestling prowess. We know how actively she goes for takedowns. We see she lands almost 5 takedowns per fight. The only time she was struggling to land takedowns is when she stepped up a weight class and she was just facing an opponent that was too big for her. A good takedown defense to go along with that, which will be very important in this fight. And she's willing to stay, like I said, stay committed to that takedown attempt. Even if she doesn't land it, that can put her in favorable clinch positions with cage control and then sort of win rounds in that way as well. Lupi Godinez is probably one of my more favorite prospects in this division. So I will admit some bias in making an analysis here, but I'll try to keep it as objective as possible because this is a very tough fight between two well-rounded fighters. Carnelossi to me is probably the tougher fighter of the two. I feel like she's more of a power threat on the feet with the types of strikes that she throws. And I think she's just as strong as Lupita Godinez in terms of resorting to a ground game or to a clinch. And again, that's going to make things really tough for Lupi. I think the difference to me is two key things in this fight. Carnelossi, she swings kind of wild. I think Lupi can sort of capitalize on that. And maybe not even with her striking necessarily, but with the second point that I want to mention, which is that Ariane Carnelossi can be taken down relatively easily. I know she's only had 2 fights in the UFC or a couple of fights in the UFC, but in one of them, the way she was being taken down, I'm expecting Lupita Godinez to capitalize on that, to have the takedown numbers, and that specifically to really be the deciding factor in this fight. I'm expecting close rounds. I'm expecting a close fight, but I am having Lupita Godinez as the winner, again, just due to having better numbers all around. I can see Carnelossi maybe slightly outlanding in terms of the strikes, but I can see Godinez landing 2, 3, 4 more takedowns in this fight, and thus the judges swinging in her favor. So I'm going Lupita Godinez, but I'm not going to call this a guarantee in any way, shape, or form. I understand she's the favorite at -170. Good value, in my opinion. I might still jump on it, in my opinion. But Carnelossi is game. Carnelossi is tough, and this should be a tough one.
Yeah, I'll be quick, man. I'm going the other way. I'm going Ariane Carnelossi in this fight. For me, this is a tough fight. I know Carnelossi when she fought Na Liang, that was a wrestler first, and she was able to get 3 takedowns on her. But in those scrambles, Carnelossi's shown that her strength is something to witness. Like she's able to scramble out of these takedowns, end up on top just by sheer strength. So I think having to prepare for a fighter like Lupita Godinez, Ariane, I think, is going to have the aggression, the stand-up advantage, whereas she's going to be marching her down, being the more aggressive, the more active striker. And I think Lupi's going to have to get it to the mat here. And again, I don't think it's going to be easy to keep Ariane Carnelossi on the ground. Like she's jacked. This girl's on something, right? So to me, this is a tough fight to call, but I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to take Ariane Carnelossi here. Even if she gets taken down, I believe she'll get back to her feet. And as the fight goes on, I just think she has that pace that she can put on that can give Lupi problems. So I'm going to go Ariane Carnelossi.
Very fair pick, a very tough fight. Let's see what happens. Let's move on to fight number 3. We have Kletzen Rodriguez versus CJ Vergara. Rodriguez is making his UFC debut. He competed on Dana White Contender Series in September. Comfortable in the stand-up, sharp strikes, hard strikes. Expect him to control center. Expect him to put the pressure on close distance when he needs to. I think he has a good jab. I think he has good fakes and feints to go along with that jab. What I like about him most is that he's patient on the feet. He can also be dynamic and explosive, but he's not going to go out there and start swinging wildly. He's going to take his time. He's going to be patient. He's essentially someone that looks to have, or seems to have at the very least, a game plan on the feet. So really like that about him, especially as somebody making his UFC debut. Taking on CJ Vergara, who lost to Odi Osborne in November. 6 of his 9 professional wins have come via KO TKO. So you definitely have to respect his power, have to respect the pop that he has. Solid striker. He wants to be the fighter coming forward. He has decent head movement. A lot of movement in the stand-up in general. Decent counter straight, solid counters in general. And again, like I said, you kind of have to respect that power. I've seen Kletzen Rodriguez be taken down, but it looks like he is able to scramble, kind of make his way back up. If that's worth noting, I don't think that'll matter in this fight because I do think it will stay on the feet. But kind of similar to the CJ Vergara versus Odi Osborne fight, I can see Kletzen Rodriguez being able to outstrike Vergara. And that's primarily due to just having more tools. When Vergara was up against Osborne, it was the kicks from distance, it was the dynamic striking. These things were giving Vergara problems, whereas Vergara kind of too reliant on just his hands, and it's not enough versus a more complete striker. I feel like Kletzen Rodriguez is a more complete striker, and I think that should get the job done. What I will say here, though, is I'm seeing the odds at -300. I'm going to say that's way too much. We speak about UFC debuts all the time. Fighters sometimes don't look their best in a debut. They might look their best in their second UFC fight. So something to flag. I'm not going to throw this on parlays. I'm going to be cautious with this one. But in analyzing the fight, I like Kletzen Rodriguez here.
Okay. This is a tough one because I actually think Vergara has some power. I think as in the close range, in the close range fighting, I think Vergara is gonna have an advantage here. Whereas I think Kletzen at distance is gonna be the better striker. He's gonna be the guy throwing the kicks, the leg kicks. Overall, I think Kletzen is the better striker because he has more tools. And he's very patient and he has a ground game. So this guy is he's a very well-rounded guy. Versus Vergara, who's looking to keep it on the feet and land that heavy blow. So I do think Vergara is live in this spot because I'm high on the guy, but I think Kletzen is just a better fighter at this point. The more well-roundedness, being the better striker. He might not have the power advantage, but he will have the technical advantage, and he is tough enough he should be able to take the shots from CJ and win a decision here. So I'm going to go Kletzen Rodriguez. Tough fight, but I think this is someone that could do some damage in the UFC. I think he has a high ceiling, Kletzen. So I think he gets it done. Kletzen Rodriguez is my pick.
Fight number 4, we have Tracy Cortez versus Melissa Gatto. Cortez is on a 9-fight win streak. She had a split decision win versus Justine Kish. That was in April of last year, so it's been a while since she has competed. Good overall stand-up, good movement around the ring. She's pretty light on her feet. Good wrestling, good takedowns. Pretty well-rounded fighter. No glaring weakness in her game. Melissa Gatto, on the other hand, she's unbeaten as a professional, 8-0, 2 draws. She beat Sijara Eubank in December. She's a grappler first. Half of her wins are via submission, so that should kind of speak to her ability there. Good defensive jiu-jitsu when she is taken down. And she's shown me a style where she wants to bring the fight to the ground right away. She'll look to lock onto the body. She'll look to take you down. She'll look to make it a grappling match. Pretty good top game. I will say, though, in her last fight versus Sijara Eubank, she was more willing to stand up. On the feet, she is improving. She has a decent calf kick. She has, decent hand speed. Looks like she can put combinations together, but still very much a ground game specialist. Very tough matchup because I think both women will be looking to, of course, keep their streaks going. Tracy Cortez basically undefeated since her first professional fight, which was a loss, and then Melissa Gatto again being 8-0, unbeaten at this point. I like Cortez though. I'll keep it pretty short. I like Cortez in this one because the only advantage that I can give Melissa Gatto is the grappling. Whereas I think Cortez has better striking, including striking IQ, which will be important here. And I think Cortez has maybe the better wrestling to secure close rounds, to land that takedown. We think about even that Sijara Eubank fight versus Melissa Gatto. Eubank was able to actively use a takedown approach to win rounds before, Gatto secured it towards the end of the fight. So, I like Cortez, again, better striker, to me, better wrestler, understanding that Gatto is the better grappler. As long as she avoids that danger, which is the submission threat, she should be okay. So I'm going Tracy Cortez on this one.
Yeah, I'm going Tracy Cortez. I think the wrestling's going to be a big thing. She can dictate the fight. She can get the takedowns. As long as she keeps her cardio, stays out of danger, I think she's going to win this fight. But let's not forget, Gatto is a high-level jiu-jitsu player. It's not going to be safe in her guard. Cortez has to be on full alert the second she's in her guard. But I think Cortez is I think she's good enough to stay out of danger and win this fight. But as far as the stand-up goes, Cortez has shown that she's the more technical striker, but the improvements Gatto has made in the last 2-3 fights tells me that she can come out here this weekend with new tools that she's learned, right, in the striking. So she's shown me that she's improving the striking, is what I'm saying, fight to fight. Cortez is looking good. I like Cortez wrestling, get her to the mat, 2-3 rounds, kind of unanimous type of decision type of fight.
Agreed. Let's move on to the fifth fight of the prelims. Almost rounding out the early prelims here, we have Andre Fialho versus Cameron VanCamp. Fialho beat Miguel Baeza back that was actually just last month, so looking to get right back in there. Good power, first and foremost, as he has 15 wins. 12 of those 15 wins are via KO, TKO, again, including his last fight versus Miguel Baeza. I've seen him fight out of both stances. He's pretty good at staying in front of you, controlling center. He's pretty composed. Relatively one-dimensional, though. He will stay in front of you. He will look to strike with you, primarily hands at that. I mean, he's introduced as a boxer, so that doesn't surprise me at all. But he's pretty effective at that one dimension that he presents. Cameron VanCamp is making his UFC debut. Hasn't competed since July, so it's been a little while for him. He's coming into the UFC on a 4-fight win streak. 9 of his 15 wins are via submission, so I think that's pretty telling. 13 of his 15 wins have ended in a finish, so he's not somebody that's used to going to decision. Switch stance element to his game on the feet, not really the most technically sound on the feet. He'll show the jab, he'll show constant level changes when he engages. He'll actively look for that takedown, ultimately, with those level changes that he presents on the feet. His top control is pretty decent as a grappler, position over submission type of style. Unless, of course, you present your neck, then he's going to go for that choke. Pretty good at landing the submissions, especially, like I said, good at finding that neck. I'd consider VanCamp a specialist when it comes to the grappling. I wouldn't really consider him a threat on the feet. Doesn't really have the best striking IQ, doesn't really have the best striking defense either. And that makes for a tricky fight because, of course, we're looking at the striker in Fialho versus the ground artist in VanCamp. And unfortunately, what makes this really hard to predict for me is that I haven't really seen Fialho's takedown defense tested enough in a way that I want to see it to confidently say whether or not he has good takedown defense or to confidently say whether or not he has bad takedown defense. But either way, I think the discrepancy in the stand-up is a little bit too much. I think Fialho is the much better striker. I think he's tough, he's sturdy, he keeps coming forward. And I think that's going to be a little bit too much for VanCamp's debut. Wouldn't be surprised if VanCamp maybe lands an early takedown. And unless he sort of lands an early choke and ends the fight, I can see Fialho making his way back to his feet, presenting a little bit too much in terms of pressure and constant pace and activity in the stand-up, and potentially landing a fight-changing punch that potentially puts Cameron VanCamp out. So I like Andre Fialho in this spot. Power threat, much better on the feet. Takedown defense to be seen. But I'm going to trust that he is at least okay in that regard. I'm going Andre Fialho.
Yeah, this Cameron VanCamp guy needs to get it to the mat. But when you look at this guy, who he's fought, it's kind of low level, right? So he's not really fighting guys at the UFC level. I don't even think it's the Bellator level, to be honest. And I was watching these guys he's fighting, And I was just watching the level, and it's not there. And he fought a guy, Bobby Volker. He lost that fight clearly. What's the age of this Volker guy? Because I believe he was in the UFC. Was he in the UFC? This guy?
43 years old.
Yeah. Was this guy in the UFC? I believe he was. His name's familiar.
He was, yeah, back in
Yes.
2014.
Yeah, I trust me. So, yeah. So put it like that. This guy lost to that guy. This guy's not good, and he's gonna want to take it to the mat. And our boy is training with Sanford MMA, Andre Fialho. He trains out of Sanford MMA. In my opinion, Sanford MMA is top 3 gyms right now in the game. Top 2 in my opinion. So a lot of good fighters there to train with. Justin Jackson from Bellator. You got Brunson, you got Gilbert Burns, you got all these grapplers that can get him ready for this fight. I'm sure he's ready for whatever grappling this guy's going to try to bring here. I'm pretty sure he's going to be ready for this. And remember, Usman was there. Usman was there before. Obviously, Burns was in the same division, so he kind of seeked out a new gym with Whitman. But yeah, this is a fight that I see Fialho knocking him out in the first round. So I'm going Andre Fialho to get it done here.
All
Boxing's too clean. Boxing's too clean.
Let's move on to fight number 6. In that case, ending off the early prelims, we have Blagoy Ivanov versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. For Ivanov, been 2 years since he last competed. He had a split decision loss to Augusto Sakai, May 2020. Southpaw on the feet, expect him to jab, expect him to use fakes and feints, good power, sneaky combinations. Also has a sturdy chin. He's never been knocked out before. 1 takedown per fight as well. I'm going to say some very similar things about Marcos Rogerio de Lima. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Ben Rothwell. Explosive hands, good kicks. He unloads combinations, especially early in the fight. Very dangerous early fight threat for anyone. He has a solid clinch, and he can also land the takedown, about 1 per fight. He can keep guys down. He can, stay in control on top. He has decent ground and pound. So this makes for an interesting fight. I think Ivanov's chin could kind of save him from the early threat that de Lima can be. But I think de Lima is maybe a little bit more active. But I think Ivanov might be a little bit more consistent as the fight goes on. But I think even with Ivanov's potential consistency here, I like de Lima. I like how quick he's looked on the feet in his last couple of fights. And we also have to respect that he's been the active fighter between these two, whereas Ivanov is coming off of a 2-year layoff. I think he's 37 years old now. If I'm not mistaken, let's take a look here. 35 years old, so not as old as I thought, but you take 2 years off, you come back at 35 years old. I don't know what you're going to look like. I don't know if you're going to look better. I don't know if you're going to look worse. I don't know what your reason is for sort of stepping back in, or what your reason is for being out as long as you've been. So, potentially looking at some ring rust here, and that ring rust could be all the advantage that Marcos Rogerio de Lima needs. So I'm looking for Marcos Rogerio de Lima to pull this one out. He's going to be my pick.
Yeah, and this fight, when I look at these guys, it's a heavyweight banger, right? So Blagoy is always fighting much taller guys, just like de Lima. They're both fighting tall guys. So this is kind of a breath of fresh air here. These are kind of the smaller heavyweights that are there, height-wise. And I think Rogerio needs to get it done in that first round. He's shown that in that first round. He's very dangerous. Really good leg kicks. He's looking really good in the striking, really smooth. But it looks like he's a kind of a round 1 or bust type of fighter. He's going to have to get Blagoy out of there. But Blagoy has shown that he has that Mark Hunt type chin, right? So he's fought heavy-handed guys, even guys like Derek Lewis. Guys couldn't finish him. This guy has taken shots from the heaviest handed guys. Dos Santos. These guys can't finish him. So I see how this fight goes. I could see Rogerio coming out banging the first round, looking good. But I believe as the fight goes on, I think the cardio is going to hit de Lima a bit. And I think that's where Blagoy is gonna do good here. And Blagoy can also take it to the mat. He has the wrestling advantage, the grappling, the sambo. He's gonna be able to take it to the mat, and one takedown is all it might take. These are heavyweights. A couple ground and pound, the fight could be called, right? So I like Blagoy. I actually like Blagoy in this spot here. Styles make fights, and I think this is the type of guy that doesn't have the cardio. He's gonna try to knock him on the first round. Blagoy can take a hit. And then as the fight goes on, Blagoy does what he does, and I see him getting a win here or a stoppage.
And for what it's worth, I mean, this is a fight that I was going very back and forth on. And the reasons that you mentioned were the reasons I was leaning on the side of Ivanov. So definitely a very fair pick. And if nothing else, a very tricky fight to call. Let's move on to fight 7. Brandon Royval, Matt Schnell. Royval beat Rogerio Bontorin via split decision. That was back in January. Very dynamic striker. We know Royval to be at this point. He's a southpaw. He can switch stance as well. Very dynamic combinations. We know he has good kicks, good hands, good movement, a lot of in and out, a lot of fakes and feints, good, consistent, high level of activity. Active on his back, submission attempts. We see he attempts almost 2 submissions per fight. Good jiu-jitsu, of course, that said, good submission defense as well. He's not somebody who's going to quit. He's not somebody who's going to tap early or give up. So you can kind of give him that toughness rating as well. For Matt Schnell, the last time he fought was May of last year. So maybe a little bit of ring rust present. He coincidentally fought Rogerio Bontorin as well. He lost in that fight. Matt Schnell, a bit more of a methodical style of stand-up. He kind of lulls you to sleep. Then he looks to attack. Quick hands, accurate strikes, good combinations, especially coming off of counter situations. He's a very efficient striker, good movement in the ring as well. But I will say this, in that Rogerio Bontorin fight versus Matt Schnell, didn't look impressive at all in that fight. His hands weren't active at all. He never really looked like he was trying to win that fight. So it concerns me a bit how he's going to end up looking in this one, especially against Royval. We know that both guys can be taken down, but we also know that both guys don't land the takedown too often, even though they are capable of doing so. So I do expect this one to stay on the feet. And what makes this one, I'm going to say, somewhat easy to call for me. I mean, it's still a fight. It still can go in any direction. So I'm not saying this happens in a guaranteed way, but what makes it easy to predict for me is that we know Royval brings it every time. I trust him way more in this spot. We know that Royval is a lot more dynamic. We know that he can match the level of technique as well that Matt Schnell provides. Whereas for Matt Schnell, I think he would prefer more of a methodical fight, and Royval isn't going to give him that. Royval is going to give him high pace, high intensity, a type of style that might be overwhelming for Matt Schnell. So I like Royval in this spot. I mean, again, like I said, Schnell is a very effective counter puncher, so he can definitely land something in a counter situation, especially with the aggression that Royval presents. But like I said, I like Brandon Royval in this one. I'll keep it pretty simple.
Yeah, I like Brandon Royval here. I like him to get it done here. I think he's, out of the two, he's the more durable guy, in my opinion. They've both been cracked and they've both been knocked out, but I think Brandon Royval is the more durable guy, the better jiu-jitsu fighter. And I think the big thing in this fight are going to be the kicks. And I think that's going to be the big thing. So I like Brandon Royval. I think he gets it done. I just think he's better than Matt Schnell almost everywhere. Maybe the wrestling, but I don't see him keeping Royval on the ground. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I think Brandon Royval is better everywhere in this fight. I think this is one of the easier fights to call in this card. You got to go with Brandon Royval in this spot.
All right, so let's move on to fight number 8. We have Macy Chiasson versus Norma Dumont. For Chiasson, she lost to Raquel Pennington back in December. Tall, aggressive, pressing, striking. She has the long punches. We know she's willing to engage. She's going to enjoy a 5-inch reach advantage in this one. She does have more patience in her approach, especially lately. Better distance management as well. Good long jab, good 1-2. She'll throw combinations as well. She likes that tie clinch. She likes the knees in the clinch, especially as the taller fighter. Has respectable takedown defense, maybe not from a percentage perspective. She's only about 64%, but she does use her long frame to her advantage. She can land a takedown of herself, of her own, I should say. One takedown per fight, although I won't really depend on her for that. And she's still somebody who's improving every fight. So, from December till now, 5 months, she could look better than she did versus Raquel Pennington, especially losing that fight where you typically learn some lessons in those situations. She's going up against Norma Dumont, though, very tough opponent who beat Aspen Ladd back in October. That was a 5-round main event slot. She can switch stance a bit. She's pretty light on her feet. She uses that leg kick a lot, has respectable stand-up, has some pop in her punches as well. She looks comfortable on the feet, quite simply. Good fakes, good in and out movement as well. She has a good jab. She can land solid combinations, good strong clinch against the cage. Don't forget, she's a grappling and a ground specialist as well. She has good takedowns too. So Norma Dumont, pretty complete fighter, and one of the better fighters in this women's featherweight division, albeit the division is not the deepest. Macy Chiasson's last fight versus Pennington, that showed me that she can still be outclassed on the feet. And simply put, I think Norma Dumont offers a style that can beat her on the feet. I also feel like Norma Dumont is the stronger grappler. I also feel Norma Dumont is the stronger wrestler. So simply put, I like Norma Dumont everywhere in this fight, especially looking at these odds. They're pretty decent, minus 220 in the area of those odds. I like Norma Dumont in this spot. I think I'm going to pick her, at least 8 times out of 10. And this time around, I'm going to pick her as well.
Man, this Macy girl's vicious, man. She has the elbows, right? So, and she's gonna have the length in this fight. So I think she's live. I think she could be successful in the stand-up just with that reach and her technique. So for me, it's a tougher fight. But ultimately, I went down to I ended up with Norma Dumont. I think she can mix up some grappling. I think physically she could be the stronger girl, or she will be the stronger girl. In there. And again, she has good movement with the striking. She moves in and out. She's going to be marching her down, holding the center of the cage. These are things judges like. In a fight that's likely going to decision, like a high percentage of women's fights go to decision. I think Norma Dumont is going to get her hand raised. So I'm going to go Norma Dumont to get this done.
All right, let's move on to the 9th fight of the prelims. We have Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts. For this fight, Francisco Trinaldo split decision win versus Dwight Grant back in October. 43 years old. You always got to point out his age, especially when we're looking at an older fighter, taking on someone who's quite younger than him. Kickboxer, BJJ practitioner as well. He's a southpaw in the stand-up, heavy strikes with the hands and feet, especially with that left straight that he has. Solid clinch, solid takedowns. He's pretty good on top. Just a good overall veteran fighter. Again, no glaring weakness to his game. He can do a little bit of everything. Danny Roberts, on the other hand, 2-fight win streak. He had a split decision win versus Ramazan Amiv back in October. That was a pretty good win for him. He's considered a striker, southpaw stance as well. He will do a lot of his striking from the outside. He moves pretty decently well too. Good jab. He'll use the kicks. He'll maintain that wide stance to try to avoid the wrestling threat. He's willing to clinch and sort of getting close as well, which is a little bit surprising. 4 of his KOs have come from situations that started with knees in the clinch. Roberts, regardless of that stance that he tries, he doesn't really have the best takedown defense. He has shown the ability to decently scramble, though, so that could work in his advantage. Danny Roberts, to me, he's solid, but what concerns me is that he doesn't really go out there to win rounds definitively. He does have a few split decision wins to his name. I expect Trinaldo to have a decent game plan here. I expect him to be the fighter coming forward. I expect him to get at least 1 round using takedowns. But I think about Trinaldo's performance in his last fight. He was having trouble against Dwight Grant as a striker, not being able to close the range. Dwight Grant using his length effectively. not being able to close that distance. And I look at Danny Roberts as a much more polished version of what Dwight Grant was able to do. Danny Roberts also will have at least a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight, as well as a couple of inches in height, 3 or 4 inches in height as well. So I think this is a split decision type of fight, but I am leaning in favor of Danny Roberts as the fighter who will keep it outside, who will kind of, stick and move, strike effectively. And Trinaldo, I mean, he kind of stares at you at times and he doesn't really implement his offense. So close fight, but I'm going with Danny Roberts.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. This is a tough fight. For me, I want to go Danny Roberts because of his age, right? But for me, the biggest big thing in this fight, because I know it's going to be a striking fight, they're going to be throwing bombs at each other. And for me, the durability is the thing I'm looking at here, because I think they're both going to land bombs on each other. I don't think they're both the best defensive strikers. And the durability is a big thing. For me, Danny Roberts has been flattened before. And in my memory, I don't remember Francisco Trinaldo getting knocked out. Like, I don't remember him getting like cleanly knocked out. So that for me is why I'm going to go with Trinaldo. But again, the age, man, don't bet this fight. I wouldn't bet this fight because, again, Danny Roberts is a great pick. I was leaning towards him. But again, the durability, right? So I can see Danny Roberts winning the fight and then all of a sudden one shot, right? Just like last week with Font versus Marlon Vera. So I'm going to go Francisco Trinaldo to pull out one last win here. I know he's getting old, but I think he has one more win left in him.
Moving on to the final fight of the prelims, we have Randy Brown versus Khaos Williams. Randy Brown's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Jared Gooden back in October. Long, tall striker. We see he's going to be 3 inches in height, only 1 inch in reach, but still a very long fighter. Long front kicks, long jab. He's an explosive striker. He's a dynamic striker. Good quick combination, solid movement as well. 11 of his 14 wins have been finishes, a good assortment between KOs and submissions. 6 of them via KO, TKO, 5 of them via submission. So, of course, he has that high finish rate to him. He's been good, even since his amateur career, at finding those guillotine and RNC opportunities, rear naked choke, of course. Just a good overall fighter, good prospect in this welterweight division, and looking to keep it going versus a very dangerous Khaos Williams, who's on a 2-fight win streak, beat Miguel Baeza back in November. Bit of a one-trick pony, but he has scary power. I mean, simply put, he'll show some fake jabs. He'll show some low kicks. Both of them are meant to set up that power punch. He's essentially going to be looking for that opportunity to explode and let the punches go. I'll be honest, when I saw this fight, felt really good about Randy Brown. Was very shocked to see him as the underdog here. I feel like he's the better striker. I feel like he's the overall better MMA fighter. But again, Khaos Williams has that scary power. You could have potentially said the same thing about Miguel Baeza being the more talented fighter until Khaos Williams put him out with one punch. So Khaos Williams can always land that fight-changing punch. But Randy Brown is not Miguel Baeza. Right? I'm going to go with the fighter in Randy Brown, who I feel is more diverse, who I feel is more dynamic, who I feel is tough as well, as opposed to the striker who, in my opinion, likely only has the striker's chance. So especially seeing Randy Brown at underdog odds here, I'm definitely going with him. Even if Randy Brown was a minus 175, minus 200 favorite, I think I would still go for him. So I'm liking Randy Brown in this spot. I recognize the threat that Khaos Williams is, but I think if that doesn't land, Randy Brown should cruise his way to victory here.
Yeah, that's why this is one of the tough ones. It's that power that Khaos has, right? So for me, it's hard for me to make a decision on this fight because Randy Brown's been knocked out by Nico Price, who was laying on his back, and he was knocked out by Vicente Luque. So this guy's chin has been checked before, and he went down. out cold, right? So Khaos can land that, I think, and this fight's over. But I'm actually going to go with Brown. I just think that Brown has more things he brings to the match here. He's going to be the taller fighter. He also brings a grappling advantage, like a big grappling advantage, actually, to this matchup. That I think if he takes it to the mat here, I think he's levels above Khaos Williams on the mat. So I'm going to go with Randy Brown here because I think he can hold his own. I think he's technically the better striker here. Avoid the bombs, keep your hands up. If anything, clinch, get the takedown. But I just think he's an overall better MMA guy at this point. So I'm going to go Randy Brown here to avoid the power and get the win.
All right, let's move on to the main card. We have 5 fights on the main card, as I mentioned. Starting with the first one of the 5, Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lauzon. Cowboy lost to Alex Morono in May of last year. He's winless in his last 6 fights. With Cowboy, it's really a matter of what type of fighter he is at this stage in his career. Again, coming off of 6 straight losses in a row, or winless in his last 6, I should say, because one of those fights was a draw. He's considered a Muay Thai kickboxer. The kicks are still going to be dangerous. They're still going to be signature Cowboy. Still going to lack head movement, though. Still going to be very hittable. Still going to show a suspect chin, especially lately. And that's going to be interesting versus Joe Lauzon, who, performs really well early on in fights. Lauzon hasn't competed since October 2019. So very curious to see what he's going to look like 2.5 years later. But like I said, especially early in the fight, likes to come forward. He has a decent jab. The hands in general are decent. His combinations in his last showing were still pretty decent. Also a solid wrestler, good takedowns, good top control. He can use his wrestling to win rounds on top. Cardio might be a huge issue for him, though, in fights that I've seen him in the past. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is a retirement fight for Cowboy. I've heard some rumblings regarding that, so that's something to keep in mind for sure. But I'll keep it short. I can't trust Cerrone at all, almost regardless of who he faces at this point. And going up against Joe Lauzon kind of offers a little bit more, in my opinion. I think the striking, maybe not necessarily better, but I think a little bit more effective, again, at this stage in their careers. I think Lauzon is the better wrestler, potentially the better grappler as well. And only a year younger won't really make a difference there. But especially as an underdog, I'm seeing some value with Joe Lauzon. I am going to recommend completely staying away from this fight because truly anything can happen. But again, just cannot trust Cowboy Cerrone, especially as a pretty moderate favorite here at -175. Just can't go with him at all. Just can't trust him. So I'm going Joe Lauzon to get this done. Wouldn't be surprised if Cowboy gets hurt again. Wouldn't be surprised if he is winless in his last 7 fights to ride off into the sunset for his career.
Yeah, this is the type of fight where it's impossible for anyone to feel confident about either side here. As you mentioned, Cerrone's on a big losing streak. Lauzon hasn't fought in so long. So there's not really much to be said about this fight. Now, when I look at Lauzon, though, he's been in the gym, man. He has a gym. He's training people every day. So this guy's been in the gym every day. And he has his new stable of fighters that he's training. So this guy, Lauzon, is active. So I'm going to go with Lauzon in this spot here. Because obviously Cerrone here, he's been looking like trash. Let's be realistic. We do not disrespect the fighters. That's one thing we do here. We try our best to never disrespect the fighters because we respect them. I can't go in the ring, but let's be honest. This guy is looking like trash, and he's getting finished in the first 2 minutes. And this is a legend. This is a legend, right? So this is a guy that in his last fights, he's looking like he shouldn't be there against these guys. Like his time's up. Lauzon, I don't know where he's at. But again, as I mentioned, he opened up his own gym. He has his own MMA team now. He's been in the gym the whole damn time. So I'm gonna go Joe Lauzon again. You can't feel comfortable on either side. But again, Cerrone looks like he's out of it, and he's the type of guy that won't turn down a fight. He's probably begging Dana, please give me a fight, please give me a fight. And they finally relented when they begged Lauzon to come out of retirement to fight him because they realized he can't fight anyone on the roster, so they had to get a special guy. But I don't think he can beat him. So I'm gonna go Joe Lauzon here. A fight that you really can't predict, but I just think he's more active at this point. So Lauzon's my pick. I think he has more left.
Moving on to the second fight of the main card, and maybe another fight that you can't really predict. We have Maurício Shogun Rua versus Ovince St. Preux, OSP. This is their second time fighting. OSP lost to Tanner Boser back in June, but that was in the heavyweight division. This is back at light heavyweight. Never really know what version of OSP you're going to get. I mean, skill-wise, he's somebody who does have, who technically has it all. Switch stance fighter. He's a patient striker, very relaxed in the ring. More of a point style counter fighter type of style, as opposed to somebody who's going to put offensive pressure on you. He has a lot of kicks. He has good striking IQ overall, but he does throw one strike at a time. Not really the most active striker, and we see that represented in his significant strikes landed per minute numbers there. The movement is okay, good distance control. And again, like I said, skill-wise, he can do it all. He can clinch, he can grapple. He lands over a takedown per fight. 9 wins via submission. Very diverse fighter. Shogun Rua, on the other hand, hasn't competed since November 2020. That was a loss to Paul Craig at that time. Again, at this stage in his career, hard to predict what you're going to see this time around, 1.5 years later. The stand-up, from his previous fights, definitely a slow down a bit. It's kind of one shot at a time, big swings, big misses, decent jab though, likes to come forward as well. He does still actively look for that clinch. He's still active in the clinch. Look for him to potentially try to bring the fight to the ground as well. Again, very long UFC career and still has very respectable takedown numbers at 2 takedowns per fight. Good groundwork as well, solid ground and pound, not afraid of anyone's ability on the ground. We know his grappling ability already as well. Not really a submission threat, but we know his grappling ability. Like I said, first and foremost, anybody's fight, this should be a pick'em. OSP should not be as big of a favorite as he is. Both fighters will fight at that slower pace that they both want in an opponent. I expect Shogun to be the better fighter, to be the fighter coming forward. I expect OSP to be the fighter moving backward, of course. I ultimately expect Shogun to win this fight, understanding that OSP can pull off that quote unquote surprise, right? You think about that first fight, step back, counter check. I think it was a hook, if I'm not mistaken, knocked Shogun out, and that fight was over before it started. We know OSP is known for his Von Flue chokes coming out of nowhere. So if we don't get that quote unquote surprise from OSP, I expect, again, Shogun to be that person coming forward, Shogun to starting the clinch, engaging in the clinch, potentially landing a takedown, potentially getting some ground and pound. Especially as an underdog, I'm liking Shogun in this spot. He has to be my pick just based on him being the aggressor and really nothing more than that. But again, similar to the last fight, can't feel confident in any direction that you go in with either fighter that you go with. But I can't trust OSP. Can't trust Shogun either, but I'm going to end up picking Shogun in this fight because I think it's a pick'em and Shogun is a pretty sizable underdog.
Yeah, that's fair, because at the end of the day, we don't know what we're going to get in this fight. Shogun coming back, is he fighting for real or is he fighting for money? I thought Shogun was done a long time ago. I thought he was done in that Nogueira fight. I like OSP here. I think eventually he's gonna rush him like a linebacker, tackle him to the ground, and just lay on top. He's too big, and I think that's all he needs to do in this fight is get him to the ground, lay on top of him. I don't see Shogun reversing. I don't see Shogun doing anything to get out of that position. And obviously OSP has that Von Flute choke as well. So yeah, I think it's going to come down to OSP being a bit more durable than Shogun. Even if they're striking, he can get him down. I think Shogun could win the striking, but 1-2 kicks from OSP, I could see Shogun getting hurt, right? So I'm gonna go OSP. I just think he is more. I think he has more left right now. I think he's a better fighter right now, and I think he could use his wrestling here to win an easy fight.
All right, from 2 fights on the main card that I didn't really love on to 3 fights that I do really love. We're going to move on to fight number 3 on that main card, looking at Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. Chandler lost to Gaethje, of course, in November. Good in and out movement, good jab, good straight punch. He has that stalking pressure style of stand-up, puts everything into his punches. You know, he knocks guys out, especially with that power hand. Underrated striking IQ. I'll give him that as well. Mixes his punches up pretty well. Uses level changes as well, given his wrestling threat that he has. And he's a good wrestler, something that he can legitimately resort to, and something that I think he will legitimately resort to in this fight, given the circumstances. Tony Ferguson, 3-fight losing streak, lost last year to Beneil Dariush. That was the last time that he fought. Who is Tony Ferguson at this stage in his career? I mean, he's definitely, somebody who's past his prime, 38 years old. But how much does he still have left in the tank? We're going to have to see that. Still presents a switch stance style, still a very unorthodox striker, good combinations, almost a borderline capoeira-esque style at times with how often he stance switches. And that presents some timing problems for his opponents. Still a really good grappler, and a good grappler off of his back. So kind of tries to keep himself as protected as possible if he is taken down. We know Michael Chandler is a crowd pleaser. We know he's a fan favorite, but I think he's going to kind of tone it down a bit for this fight. I think he's going to do everything that he can strategically to make sure that he wins this fight. He's still at the top of the lightweight division, ranking wise, but he's 1-2 in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight losing streak as well. So doesn't want to slide too far. And I expect him to kind of tone down the crowd pleasing as a result, or in favor of kind of fighting smarter. We know that Tony Ferguson, like I said, is a shell of himself. His reflexes aren't as good on the feet. He's a bit more hittable now. He's susceptible to the takedown. And that's the biggest thing here. Charles Oliveira took him down 3 times and dominated when he had him on the ground. Beneil Dariush took him down 3 times and dominated when he had him on the ground. Not even necessarily in terms of ground and pound, but just really in terms of positioning, winning the fight, or winning the round, I should say. Tony accepting his back and just kind of giving up the round. That tells me that Michael Chandler should have a clear blueprint here to be able to use his wrestling as well, as long as he's careful with, again, that legitimate grappling ability that Tony Ferguson has off of his back. So not necessarily looking for Michael Chandler to come and steamroll past Tony Ferguson here, but I am looking for Michael Chandler to use his wrestling effectively, notch 2 rounds, maybe notch all 3 rounds, and just win a much more toned down decision versus Michael Chandler over his last 3 fights in the UFC. So I'm going Michael Chandler on this one. Big favorite for a reason. I understand it. I wish it was lower, but I get it. So I'm going Michael Chandler on this one.
Yes. Now, based on what we saw from Ferguson his last couple of fights, I'm going to have to go Michael Chandler. I'm going to have to go that route. However, I will say this. So I'm going Michael Chandler. But I will say this, that this is a type of fight that Ferguson can win here, because Chandler, he likes to show off, and he likes to stand when he shouldn't. He can just take these guys to the ground and kind of ground them out. He could have took Gaethje to the ground, but he decided to strike with them, right? In this fight, though, he should use the takedowns, because if he plays that striking game, as the fight goes on, Ferguson gets better as the fight goes on. If he's doing well, if he doesn't get hurt, he does better as the fight goes on. So his cardio is going to be an advantage here. And let's not forget, Pitbull knocked Chandler down, so he has been knocked down. he has been finished by strikes. So Ferguson, by all means, can do that. Just like Ferguson dropped Justin Gaethje. So this is a fight you gotta be careful, man. Like, I'm being honest, as a UFC fan, I'm gonna definitely put 50 bones, 25 bones on Tony Ferguson, just because I'm a fan of the sport. And you're not getting much for putting anything on Chandler. But Ferguson is a live dog here. If he survives that first round, Chandler slows down. Ferguson doesn't. And at that point, the fight will get interesting. Could be a fight of the night type fight as the fight goes on. So you got to be careful in this spot. I'm going to go Chandler, though, for the channel, because I think that he has decent enough striking. He likely could drop Ferguson because Ferguson has been looking shaky lately. And then he has that wrestling advantage. He has the strength advantage. And he's been looking better his last fights than Ferguson has. So Chandler's my pick. But again, I think you got to really factor in that Tony can win this fight. This is, if there's anybody in the top 5 that he can beat, it's Michael Chandler.
Co-main event of the evening, Thug Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza. This is their second time fighting. This time around, it is for the women's strawweight title. Thug Rose split decision win over Weili Zhang, I should say, back in November. Her striking is clean, comes from her footwork, comes from her movement. She's light on the feet, good jab, moves very well laterally, good in and out movement as well. Good timing, good IQ, good head movement, just very advanced on the feet, especially at this point. Lands 2 takedowns a fight as well. I wouldn't call her a strong wrestler per se, but she's definitely not a one-dimensional fighter in that regard. Carla Esparza, on the other hand, kind of is a one-dimensional fighter. She's on a 5-fight win streak, though, to earn her way back to the top of the division. She beat Xiaonan Yan back in May. She's often in close fights, a number of fights decided by split decision or majority decision, so that's something to be wary of. She's a relentless wrestler to that one dimension that I mentioned. She's going to look to get the fight to the ground. She's going to look to do everything that she can to keep it on the ground. Not really the strongest on the feet, but she has toughness. She'll eat shots. She'll show the damage, but she'll eat shots, and at the expense of trying to implement that relentless wrestling that she's going to go for. And she's good at keeping girls down and controlling them. She's very strong, short, stocky, strong for this strawweight division. For a part 2, a second fight, a rematch, usually it deserves mention of how their first fight went, but that fight was 10 years ago almost at this point, so not really relevant. Rose Namajunas to me is just way more well-rounded, the way more complete fighter than Carla Esparza. But there's advantages on both sides here. If I am to make mention of their first fight at all, Namajunas found herself being taken down, oftentimes due to her mistakes. Those aren't mistakes that I anticipate her making anymore. I can see Namajunas being able to keep the fight on the feet at some point in the fight. Again, for a 5-round fight, she might give up round 1, she might give up round 2 in terms of being taken down, in terms of Esparza being able to land that takedown. But tactically, I can see her making the necessary adjustments, stopping that takedown or scrambling or just keeping it at distance when it comes to round 3 as well as the championship rounds. So I don't know if Carla Esparza can maintain 5 rounds of wrestling, and I think that's her only shot to get a win here. I don't even know if she can maintain 3 or 4 rounds of wrestling in this championship environment. So I really like Thug Rose here. I mean, I definitely understand the threat that Esparza is. Esparza has a clear path to winning rounds, but does she have a clear path to winning the fight? I don't necessarily think so. So Rose Namajunas is going to be my pick. More well-rounded, should have the better game plan, should be prepared, as prepared as possible for the takedown threats that Carla Esparza is going to provide.
Yeah, I'm going Rose as well. Big thing is the 5 rounds, right? And I don't think Esparza, I seen her fight versus, I think it was Marina Rodriguez. Was it that for the Grasso fight? She kind of looked weak in the 3rd round. She wasn't able to go for those takedowns. She was gassed. Like she slowed down big time. And I see Rose at that point really taking advantage. If Carla can't get this to the match, she's in trouble, because this Rose is not the same Rose she's fought before. This Rose has really good hands, really good footwork, good feints. Her striking is literally like 3 times better than it was when they first fought. So, and this being a 5-rounder, and Rose getting all that experience, that championship experience, that training with Whitman, Usman, Gaethje, and the team over there. She gets it done here. I like her here. So I'm going to go Rose Namajunas here. And I'm pretty confident here. Even if she loses that first round, don't panic. As the fight goes on, Esparza is going to gas, and the takedowns will be tougher, won't be there. And on the feet, Rose is way better. Like, it's not even close than Carla. So I like Rose to get it done.
All right, let's move on to the main event of the evening. Very tough fight here. Lightweight title on the line. Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Oliveira beat Dustin Poirier back in December. Hasn't lost a fight since Paul Felder back in 2017. At this point, you have to recognize him as a truly complete fighter, very sharp striker at this point. Sharp straight punches, good speed, good accuracy. Punches have a bit of sting on them as well. We saw what he was able to do to Michael Chandler, showing good striking IQ lately as well. We know he can strike. We know the striking has improved to a point where we can say that he can strike. We know that he can take you down. We know, of course, he's a very elite grappler, really good top position on the ground. You don't want him on top of you. I'll keep it as simple as that. For Justin Gaethje, unanimous decision win over Michael Chandler in November. Keeps the fight on the feet, has a high level of activity, moves well laterally. This is all Trevor Whitman stuff here, so that doesn't surprise me as well. Good high level striking, good striking IQ, good usage of leg kicks. In and out movement is pretty good as well. Good accuracy as well. His timing on his counters are really good. His downfall is that he takes as much as he gives, right? He absorbs a lot. He's shown his chin, gets wobbled, still able to continue, still able to be dangerous, but he's definitely somebody who takes as much as he gives out. And he's usually just the guy standing at the end of the day after those exchanges. If there's one weakness that Oliveira has shown, is that he can be wobbled on the feet. You look at his last 2 opponents, they both have landed clean on Charles Oliveira. His recovery has been good in that he's been able to resort to his grappling. But if there's one fighter who can truly capitalize on that, more than Michael Chandler, more than Dustin Poirier, it's Gaethje. Oliveira, we know, is going to try to dog you to the ground. Especially if you're landing on the feet. We know Gaethje can and will land. So it'll be interesting to see if he can successfully fight off the takedown attempts. He has 73% takedown defense. Again, he's working with Trevor Whitman, which by nature makes you work with Kamaru Usman as well. So you got to imagine he does have some legitimate takedown defense. We know Gaethje has that chin that Michael Chandler didn't. We know Gaethje has that wrestling that Dustin Poirier didn't, in terms of, at the very least, fighting off the takedowns. And I think that's where the intrigue for the outcome of this fight really comes. Again, we know Trevor Whitman is going to have the correct game plan for Gaethje in this fight. And that really makes me want to go for Gaethje to kind of finally get over the hurdle, become undisputed champ. But I think where Oliveira can and will catch you, or will catch Gaethje, I should say, is with the grappling specifically. And I say that because much different opponent, of course, but I think about how easily Khabib was able to put Justin Gaethje in a triangle. I think Khabib was on his back at the time to end their fight. And, although I'm sure Gaethje has improved that and has addressed that, we know that Oliveira is a better grappler than Khabib is. And if Khabib can land it, that tells me Oliveira can land it too. Maybe not the triangle specifically, but a submission in general. It's a very close fight. It's a very tough fight. I think this is probably the hardest fight that you can give Oliveira. But I see Oliveira kind of getting his hand raised at the end of it, one way or another. He might get knocked out, but if he doesn't, I see him getting his hand raised And I think the ground game and maybe the submissions specifically is going to be the key for him. So tough fight, but I got to side with Charles Oliveira on this one.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Like this guy Oliveira is a problem. But with the Khabib comparison, big difference though. Khabib has the takedowns, right, to get the fight there, right? Oliveira has takedowns too, but he's 50% accuracy, 41% accuracy. So he does get defended a lot. He does get the fight to the mat though. This is a tough one, right? So you got to think Oliveira, that grappling is going to be the equalizer, right? I don't think so. I'm going Justin Gaethje to win this fight. I think the leg kicks is going to be a problem. I think that's going to be a big difference here in this fight. Again, this is a tough fight where Oliveira should get it done based on the odds, but I just, for some reason, think if this fight gets messy, I don't think Oliveira is ready for a Justin Gaethje type fight. If Justin Gaethje can get the pace he wants, the only guys that have beat him in that pace are Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. And those are fights where at one point in those fights, each of them, there was a point in those fights where I thought Gaethje had him and Gaethje's going to finish the fight. The fights were going back and forth. And obviously the other guy won the fight. But the point is, I don't see Oliveira lasting those type of fights. So he's going to have to get this to the mat. If he wants to stay striking, his legs are going to get beat up. And Gaethje does not waste time with the leg kicks. And in the first 3 minutes, he'll throw 6-7 leg kicks. So I like Gaethje. I like his coaching. I think they're gonna have a game plan here. I think he has the tools to win the fight. He's a big boned guy. This guy hits hard. He can take a shot. And yeah, I think he's gonna make this a dog fight. And I think the dog's gonna come out here and new champion, right? So I'm gonna go Justin Gaethje here to get it done.
Definitely a good fight, definitely worth watching. Let's take it to Vegas though, and let's kind of start picking at which underdog we feel has the best shot at winning. I'll mention mine. Mine is definitely going to be Randy Brown in this spot. We see him here as a plus 100 underdog. I've seen him as high as plus 120. Definitely my underdog of the night. I'm strongly considering, I should say, putting some money down on Randy Brown. So he's going to be my underdog pick.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I'm going Randy Brown as well as my underdog here.
All right. And then in terms of parlay piece, I'll let you go first on that one. Who are you considering for parlays, favorite picks, things along those lines?
All right. So parlay pieces, I like Andre Fialho. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because that could be that smells like a trap. I'm going Brandon Royval.
Okay.
I'm going with Rose Namajunas.
Yep.
And let me throw in Tracy Cortez.
Tracy Cortez. Just a 3?
Yeah, how much is that?
So that would be a plus 213. So $100.
That's good.
Yeah, $100 will have a profit of $212. $250 will have a profit of $532. A little bit of overlap in terms of my parlay pieces. I'm also looking at Thug Rose. I'm also looking at Brandon Royval. But in terms of a third fight that I'm looking at Norma Dumont. And I would say I was potentially considering Michael Chandler, but I definitely respect the caution that you wave on that one. So I'm going to leave him out. So I'm just looking at those 3 fights. $100 will have a $180 profit as a plus 180 ticket. And $250 will have a profit of $451. So, I mean, definitely some parlays to be made on this card, in my opinion. You have a couple of fights to choose from, but, let's kind of sign off. Let's sign off on that note. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you participate in the comments. We want to hear from you. Who are you considering on your parlay. How do you feel about our picks? How do you feel about our underdog pick being unanimous with Randy Brown? Let that all be known in the comments. We definitely want to have some good conversations there. And again, like I said, make sure you subscribe to the @Boxing MMA Picks YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it. But officially signing off, this has been UFC 274, Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje, full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.